Good day, everyone, especially to our beloved Prof. Mamari and Fernando. So, we will be having an oral discussion, but before we begin, let me introduce you myself. Hi, I'm Sir Lester Enriquez Torres, together with Ma'am Francine Undadi. This day, we will be your teacher and you will be our students. So, I just want to know, are we all in good conditions? Are we all okay? I know that we are having a rough and tough days, but I know we can surpass it. Just don't stress yourself. Everything will be okay. Just trust the process. So, the topic that was given to us by Mom Fernando is all about the child language acquisition. Shall we start now? So, I will be discussing to you the child language acquisition. I just want to ask, can anyone from the class tell me what is child language acquisition? Okay, let me elucidate what is child language acquisition is all about. Child language acquisition is the process by which humans acquire the ability to comprehend and produce language either as their first or second. The study of language acquisition provides evidence for theoretical linguistics and has practical applications in language pedagogy. So, it simply means that the CLA, which is child language acquisition, refers to how children develop the ability to understand and use language. So now, let's move. Why do you think that child language acquisition is important? Of course, children's language skills are connected to their overall development and can predict their educational processes and success. So, for further explanation, let's go to the chapter preview. So, let's go now to the chapter preview of the child language acquisition. The language acquisition in children is a fascinating subject for scholars and non-scholars. How quickly from cooing and bubbling to one and two word demands amaze not only the parents but also interest the linguists and psychologists. They have been interested in understanding the stages and mechanism by which all children become competent users of language by the age 3 or 4. Children from the different backgrounds and under diverse learning conditions tend to go through similar phases in learning their mother tongue. Researchers are interested in exploring and understanding how children accomplish this remarkable feat, but also the process in this nature holds an implication for broader debate on the field of linguistics. The mechanism of how children acquire the language can shed an important light on the nature of language as well as on the nature of human learning. Let's go to the key terms. Actually, there are 41 key terms and I'm going to mention it and also elucidate it. Number 1, bubble. What is bubble? Bubbling is a stage of early language development when babies make consonant vowel or vowel consonant sounds such as ma, da, or Repetitive bubbling occurs next. For instance, mama. Okay. Number 2, balanced bilingualism, the state of being equally proficient in both English and one's MTL is known as balanced bilingualism. Number 3, bootstrap. Bootstrap children acquire their native language through exposure to sentence or the language paired with structured representations of their meaning. Number 4, child-directed speech. Child-directed speech is the way a person's linguistic characteristics alter when speaking to an infant or toddler. Number 5, code mixing. Code mixing is the mixing of two or more languages or language varieties in speech. Some scholars use the terms of code mixing and code switching interchangeably, especially in studies of syntax, morphology, and other formal aspects of language. Number 6, code switching. Code switching occurs when a speaker uses slang or a phrase from a one language within a sentence that is otherwise spoken in another. For instance, I told kids no more TV tonight. Or, I told kids no more TV tonight. Number 7. Content words or content words are usually nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. A noun tells us which object, a verb tells us about the action happening or the state. Adjectives gives us details about objects and people, and adverbs tell us how, when, or where something is done. Number 8. Cues. Cooing is defined as vocalization of long pure vowel sounds with variations. For instance, other term those observed during crying or yawning, and normally occurs by the age of 3 months. Number 9. Critical period. According to Frank Sempiel, what is the critical period? Also known as the sensitive period. The critical period is a time during early constant life when the development and maturation of functional properties of the brain is plasticity is strongly dependent on experience or environmental influences. Number 10. Cross-sectional. Cross-sectional research is a study in which subjects of different ages are compared at the same time. It is often used in developmental psychology, but also utilized in many other areas, including social science, education, and other branches of science. Number 11. Function words. In linguistics, function words, also called functors, are words that have little lexical meaning or have ambiguous meaning and express grammatical relationship among other words within a sentence or specify the attitude or mood of the speaker. Number 12, high amplitude sucking. High amplitude sucking, open and close parenthesis, has a sound is presented to the infant every time a strong or high amplitude suck occurs. Infants quickly learn that their sucking controls the sounds and they will suck more strongly and more often to hear sounds they like the most. Number 13, paradigm. In our culture, childhood would be defined as a logical, moral, and aesthetic paradigm. Through its speech, psychology is creating a modern myth of childhood, technical and scientific, and therefore paradoxical. Number 14, holoplastic stage. Holoplastic stage, children have developed enough language skills to say single words during this stage. The words are usually simple and refer to every subjects or objects or help children identify their basic needs. For example, common words children say during this stage are mama or dada to get their parents' attention. Number 15, LAD, a language acquisition device. LAD is a hypothetical tool in the human brain that lets children learn and understand the language quickly. A theory developed by Noam Chomsky, who believed that every child has a language acquisition device. Number 16, LAST. Brunner came up with the idea of the LAST, language acquisition support system, which argues that children do have an innate ability to learn and acquire language, but also require the interaction of other users of the same language to excel in their learning. Number 17. Longitudinal. Longitudinal studies are carried out over a longer period of time, during which data from a group of individuals are collected at regular intervals. The focus of longitudinal studies is on the development or change of certain linguistic features or patterns of usage over time. Number 18, mean length of utterance. Mean length of utterance, open and close parenthesis, MLU, is the average number of morphemes per utterance. It is an index of expressive language development used beyond the stage of single words when a child uses two or more words together in an utterance. Number 19, metalinguistic awareness. Metalinguistic awareness, one type of metacognition, may be defined as an individual's ability to focus attention on language as an object in and of itself, to reflect upon language and to evaluate it. Number 20, multi-word stage. The multi-word stage is the final phase in the language acquisition process of children. After the telegraphic stage, open and close parentheses, around 24 months of age. Children continue to develop their language skills and move into what is known as the later word stage or mul. Number 20. Actually, there are still a 21 words, so I'm going to mention it. 21 code mixing, 22 naturalness, 23 observational studies, 24 overextension, 25 overgeneralized, 26 parallel distributed, 27 processing, 28 parental diaries, 29 poverty of the stimulus, 30 is proto conversations, 31 is representativeness, 32 is scaffolding, 33 is separate system, 34 hypothesis, 35 speech perception, 36 telegraphic speech, 37 two-word stage, 38 under extension, 39 unitary system, 40 hypothesis, 41 is vocabulary spread. As I already discussed about the child language acquisition and then also the chapter, at the same time the key terms. So now to move over, let's go to the goals. The goals of this chapter are two. The first one is introduce the main research methods for investing child language acquisition. Number second, describe the milestone of child language development. Third one is provide an overview of cross-linguistic and cross-cultural aspect of child language acquisition. The last one is analyze the major theories employed to explain child language acquisition. Let's move on to gathering data on language acquisition. Gathering data are not an easy task when the participants include young children. Their inability to comprehend properly and speak makes it improbable to gather data, due to the fact that their cognition is still on an early stage of development. This can affect the verbal output. However, it is not entirely impossible that an infant cannot acquire comprehension during the early stage of their life, since during their infancy, one can already acquire preference for the sounds of their mother's native language. Upon collecting and analyzing child language, naturalness and representativeness are what researchers often strive for. The natural data is often comparable to the child's language that often he used to communicate with his parents during his everyday routine. Will's representativeness refers to two goals. First, the language data collected from the child should be the language that the child uses every day. Hence, if a bilingual child is accustomed with speaking Spanish with his or her parents, a sample English conversation between them is not a representative of their everyday reciprocal actions. Second, the children's studied should be a representative of the general population under investigation. For instance, Spanish-English bilingual, 4 years old. Since I already discussed to you the child language acquisition, which are key terms, chapter preview, goals, and gathering data on language acquisition. This time, let me elucidate more for further clarification. Actually, there are three approaches for collecting child language data. The first one is parental diaries. Referred to as the parental diaries, are diaries of where parents registers a detailed description of their children's language development. Some of the earliest diaries dates back to the 18th century, yet mostly from the 19th century. The most prominent of these diaries were Murmur Leopold, which consists of four-volume accounts of his daughter Hildegard's acquisition of German and English. Leopold was a German-English bilingual, whereas his wife was an American with German roots. Leopold kept meticulous note from the beginning of Hildegard's 8th week of life. However, despite the fact that Leopold diaries provided rich details and significant insights into the process of language learning, the parental diary studies comes with an inherent problem due to the fact that only one parent and one child is taken into consideration, which may not reflect the representativeness of all children. Additionally, only the linguistics forms that are in great description are the utterance of which Hildegard used to reach around with his father, which can provide limited and unrepresentative samples. Any observer might choose to note those utterances that they find interesting rather than the everyday utterances which will make the insights limited. Moreover, Leopold's diaries provides a one perspective on the language acquisition process, the naturalness of the data but limited representativeness. So I already discussed about the first approaches, which is the parental diaries. So now let's go to the second one, which is the observational studies. In the early 1960s, researchers began to use audio tapes to record and transcribe the average speech of children to further discern and produce simple English sentence structures. One of the earliest and renowned observational studies were by Roger Brown, which conducted a research in Harvard University. He examined the language of three unrelated children of different families seen in his classic book. A first language, the early stages, which charts the development of grammatical and morphological system of Alam, Sarah, and Eve over time. In the 1960s, researchers used audio tapes to record children's speech to study English sentence structures. Rogers Brown, Harvard University study. A first language, the early stages documented the language developed of Adam, Sarah, and Eve. Since then, a variety of observational studies have been carried out with the use of audio tapes and videotapes to record and capture interactions between a small group of children in natural settings over an extended period of time. Over other observational studies focus on the language socialization practices were rather anthropological in nature and attempts to understand how children socialize in culturally appropriate language behavior and how linguistic competence develops, which might vary cross-culturally according to the parents' ideologies. For instance, some families view their infants chattering, crying, and grunting noises as an attempt of communication. Observational studies have tended to be longitudinal or being ongoing, following and observing the same participants over several months or perhaps for years. Additionally, there are cross-sectional observational studies which document the language habits of individuals into distinct groups. For instance, a group of 2-year-old Korean, American, and a similar group Mexican or American children. Class, only a few specific child participants are included in observational research since gathering, transcribing, and analyzing linguistic data are time intensive or takes a lot of time. As a result, while observational studies provide high marks for providing relatively natural data and representativeness of child's normal speech, it is not always clear to what extent the few participants are representative of the wider population under study. And to overcome these shortcomings, researchers share their transcripts and primary channel for doing so is the child language data exchange systems. It allows researchers to not only to examine the questions, patterns, and process across larger number of children, but also to investigate how patterns differ across children, form different language groups. Okay, let's go down to the last discussions about observational studies. So, observational research often includes a small sample size of children participants, making it difficult to accurately represent the larger population. To overcome this limitation, researchers use the child language data exchange systems. to share transcripts and examine questions patterns across a larger number of children and language groups. So, this will be the last approaches that I will be discussed. Experimental studies. There are many different methodological approaches used in experimental investigations, and they involve tests that are more strictly regulated. Experimental studies typically include more focused research goals and more controlled data collection techniques, such as the HAS. Furthermore, rather than through observation and description, experimental language data frequently uses carefully throughout a process to gather information. And also, experimental studies tend to recruit a large number of participants while collecting fewer data from them. As a result, the data may be less natural but are more likely to accurately reflect the community being studied. So, experimental investigation employs stricter methods focusing on focused research goals and controlled data collection techniques like the HABs. These studies often employ carefully throughout a process and recruit large participants, resulting in less realistic but more accurate data. One of the most widely used experimental techniques used in observational studies is the high amplitude sucking paradigm HABs. The aim of the procedure is to test whether the infant can discriminate a difference between the two stimuli. The process relies on the reaction of the infant, whether it perceive a difference between two similar sounds of two different words, such as lice and rice. Lice and rice. In this process, the infant is given a pacifier and presented with the word lice, L-I-C-E. At first, the rate of sucking increases, but as the lice is repeatedly presented, the infant becomes bored with the sound and the rate decreases. Afterwards, the word rice, which is R-I-C-E, is presented, and if the rate of the sucking increases, it is interpreted that the infant perceives a difference between the two stimuli, but if the rate remains the same, the infant fails to differ the distinctive sound of the two stimuli. Okay, let's go down to the last one and the last part of the oral discussion. The high amplitude sucking paradigm, open and close parenthesis, HAS, is a widely used experimental technique in observational studies to test infants' ability to distinguish between two stimuli. The process involves the infant being presented with lice and rice, with increasing sucking rates indicating a difference and decreasing rates indicating no difference. This method is widely used in observational studies. So, in addition to the techniques for measuring authority, discrimination, there are several ways of assessing how the children's syntax develops and is comprehended. For instance, in an elicited production like a game, children are taught how to produce a specific sentence by means of a play or picture. Another commonly used technique is the truth value judgment test. Here, the child is presented with a story and then asked to render a yes or no judgment about whether the statement accurately describes what happened in the story. The oral discussion is done. So class, that's all for today's. I hope that you were able to learn something from me and I was able to explain it well and as I elucidate the topic that was given to me. So since I already explained to you the child language acquisition, the key terms, chapter preview, goals, gathering data on language acquisition, and also the three approaches, which are the parental diaries, observational studies, and experimental studies. I hope that I make myself clear and also you gain knowledge from me. So for furthermore, as mom and daddy will be discussed about the data milestone in child language development. So that would be all. Thank you, muchas gracias, daghan salamat for spending your precious time just to watch this video. Again, thank you and God bless you. Class dismissed.